You're good. Yep.
Okay, we got 4 o'clock. This meeting to order. Bonnie, roll call.
Okay, JJ Reinhardt.
Here.
JJ, okay. Mark Dennis.
Here.
Nathan Tormelon.
Here.
Bonnie Good, here. Tim Harden.
Here.
John Kelly.
Here. We have a quorum. Welcome, everybody. If everybody's had a chance to take a look at the minutes, would entertain a discussion or a motion to approve as presented.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any public hearings? Okay, don't see any. Old business. Dan? Spark Shop?
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't think I got one for you. I'm sorry. Okay. If you have a nameplate, I give you a paper. Otherwise, I might miss you. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Thanks for allowing me to be on the agenda. This is just a continuation of the conversation we've had a couple times previously. I think the last time I was here, felt like you were overall supportive of the project in theory, but wanted to have some more stakes driven in the ground as far as progress toward the project before we committed any funding. So I think I've brought what you asked for plus a little more today. And first of all, warranty deed. So we do have possession of what we all know is the old George's Tire Shop property at 300 and 301 East 2nd Street here in Seymour. So we do have ownership of the property. The next paper there is a letter of commitment, basically stating that our application for Ready 2.0 funding has been approved. That is not a final approval. It still has to go through an Ernst & Young audit process, but basically we've met 2 of the 3 approval layers in that process. So the IEDC has approved that application. And again, that's for $240,000 in state Ready 2.0 dollars. The next sheet is showing a little bit of local sweat equity in the project. It's nice to have some dollars in the bank on projects like this, but it's also great to have community support. And there you see that back on October 19th, we had a group from Guardian Bikes that came for the day, along with their licensed electrician, and we did tons of demo work on the property, did some cleanup, both inside and out of the property. Appreciate Rumpke also donating an open-top dumpster for that day. So it's good to have the dollars in the bank, but it's also good to see sweat equity put towards the project. And I think the last thing you asked me for last time was some type of space plan. You were the first people to see this. I actually just got this from our architect earlier today. His name is George Small. He has an office in Zionsville and in Phoenix, Arizona as well. He's done several layouts for projects here locally, working with local contractors. And so he's toured the space with me. We've talked about desired outcomes and use for the property. And this is our first pass. I'm sure what we end up with will look a little different than this. This is our first draft at what the Spark Shop project would look like. And just to walk through that quickly, you see there, the bottom right-hand corner, that office would serve as the office for the Jackson County Chamber. You obviously see restrooms, you see a cafe area, you see private offices there to the left. These would be offices that a startup business could rent or lease for short term, like month to month, but we ask for a year commitment up front. The idea is to do this below market, get them started, and then get them growing to the point that they need to come downtown and develop a storefront. Then you see several meeting areas, offices, conference rooms, things like that around the space. Stage area where we could have pitch competitions, workshops, things like that. And then the flex space is where there would actually be desks and chairs for open co-working that could be transitioned to event space when we need it. So it doesn't really make sense to have a dedicated event space that we use, 3 hours a week. We'll flex that in with open co-working space that we can transition and use that space to its best capability. So that's kind of an overview of where we're at today on the project. Hope it answers some of the questions that you had for me the last time we met. So hopefully I can answer any questions that you have on where we're at.
Do you have any questions for Dan?
Is today just mainly for updating us to see where we're at?
I'm sorry?
Is it mainly today just for updating you for our past questions and where we're at, or are you looking for more of an answer from us at this point? Or
I would love an answer from you. I would love some level of commitment, support for this project. I know we've had this conversation for, ongoing for several months now, and I feel like I've delivered answers to the questions that you've had, and we'll continue to do that. But we're to the point too where, funding sources are coming together, and I still owe the Ready folks an answer on whether there will be match dollars coming from Seymour Redevelopment for this project or not. So getting to the point where I would like to dig deeper in that conversation.
okay. I was curious if you have talked to some other smaller co-working spaces around the state of Indiana to see what their retention rates are and what type of long-term success they've had with people staying?
Yeah, so we've engaged just over 20 different co-working spaces that exist in Indiana, and then some of my network that we had in Florida still that I had connections with. The biggest issue is they run out of space. Most of them need more space to grow, especially with the dedicated desk space, which is actually where you can rent your own desk and filing cabinet. That's where you can keep your stuff all the time. The general co-working is just you bring your stuff in a backpack or whatever and work, and then you take it all with you when you leave. But most of them at that 5-year mark tell us that they see a need to expand, especially in that dedicated desk space. So in our space plan, we have a dedicated space desk area, but we have it shaped so we can easily expand that into another space if we need to, which we would expect we would, because that's what our research tells us.
Well, I was looking at some different things, and just in talking to a couple individuals, nothing as far as a set survey or anything like that, but they had shared they had some trouble with retention, and then I saw where there was actually about a 30% failure rate among co-working spaces, and that was for various reasons. But along with that, I know we talked before that I am in favor of a lot of the aspects of this, but I think that in some ways it's still maybe a larger thing than we need for the city of Seymour, but I'm still wondering about all of the use of tax dollars going towards purchase of the building or going towards operating expenses and those type of situations. So I still have some concern with that. I know that all businesses, there's no guarantee going into anything. I've been a part of it on both sides, and but I know that you had mentioned a exit plan in the previous proposal that we looked at, and it also I'm just thinking of, okay, if that did happen and you looked at selling the property or remodeling it or renovating it for some future use, then at what point, here we've used tax dollars to do this, and if somebody sells it and there's a profit off of that, then they've benefited from the investment from the taxes that were put into it. So just from that standpoint, I have some concern with.
Okay. So try to touch on all your concerns, Tim. First of all, thanks for bringing it forward. Not going to contest your 70% success rate with co-working spaces. Not everything works that's tried. That's 100% true. That's why we've done our homework. I don't want to make other people's mistakes. I want to learn from people that have been successful. And that's what we've done in this process by touring different spaces, sitting down with their founders, finding out what worked, what didn't, what worked in the beginning, what worked at 3 years, what worked at 8 years. It's hard to find much data beyond 8 years probably in co-working spaces in Indiana. It's a newer concept. So I feel like we've crafted this based on the learnings of those that have been successful. But I think a 70% success rate is a positive success rate. As far as retention, the goal is not eternal membership for people. The goal is to get them there, get them started, and get them out into other spaces in the community. And that's why we were very intentional with our planning to make sure that this space was either downtown or I called it downtown adjacent, to where it's very easy. We want people to get there, to start with bringing that backpack in after work, starting on their project, starting on their idea, actually getting it to become a business. Maybe they rent a small office space for us to have their own dedicated space. I don't want them there forever. The longest you can stay in that space is 3 years. The longest you can lease a space, an office space, is 3 years. We don't want you there forever. We want you to grow up and outgrow the space and move in and start renting an office space or storefront, whatever it is. Hopefully downtown Seymour. That's why we made it downtown adjacent. And no, I haven't given thought to selling the property. We've owned it for 30 days. Yeah, haven't done that.
Well,
But we did provide an exit strategy that we still feel like there's value. I mean, this is a prime gateway property at the intersection of 2nd and Broadway. It's a gateway to our downtown. That intersection is. If we go in there and fail, we still will have developed the space. It will be attractive. It will be positive. It would probably attract a buyer or tenant, I think, easier than it would have 30 days ago after it's been redeveloped. So, is there a risk? Yes. I'm not going to tell you there's no risk, but I think it's a very strong case for something that's needed in the community.
What type of operation is the Works Department from the county going to be doing? Is it going to be trucks in and out throughout the day? Is it more of a storage location?
Don't know. I don't represent the county. That parcel has been transferred to them, which was the plan, which was the MOU that we had with the county was to transfer that. So as soon as we took possession of all the property, the process started of transferring, and that transfer was executed to the county. So that would be at the discretion of, I guess, probably the commissioners.
So exactly how much are you asking for?
I think the number that was thrown out before was a match for what we were getting from Ready, which I think in our early conversations was 200. That number has grown to 240,000. The state was able to include some other things as match in there to get to 240. So I think that's the range. If that's fair to offer a range for an ask.
With you just getting this drawing back this morning, I assume you're still working on your budgets and estimates and those things. So
Yeah,
you don't have an idea yet of what it's going to cost to build out?
Not firm numbers, but we have what we feel like are informed estimates.
Well, and with the 240, just because we are limited on what we can spend money on.
Sure.
What would that 240 cover, and what type of expenses would that cover for you?
It would be completely redevelopment of that building and property. The ask isn't for any support with programming, staffing. It's simply construction, redevelopment.
I know one of the other things we asked for in the past was some kind of idea of the operating budget on a go-forward basis. You know, once the project is complete, everything's moved in there to make sure it's self-sustaining, going to be able to support itself.
Yeah, I provided that actually in our business plan. That's been a little while ago.
Okay.
But yeah, that's.
So no changes to that. I do remember that now.
No changes to that.
So it's still going to be self-sustaining going forward.
Yes.
remind us again of the timing of the construction and move in and all that?
I think we could actually start, I mean, we're in architectural stage right now. If we settle on this, in short order, we could start the bid process in December and potentially be swinging hammers by the end of January, early February.
Construction time,
I've been told 6-7 months.
the middle of next year. So when would you need the funding from redevelopment if it's funded?
Wouldn't really matter. The timing wouldn't really
Okay.
be critical for us. What would be critical for me though would be like some type of letter of commitment to give to the Ready folks that shows that intent is there to fund the project, or support the project.
And you need that by October 30th? Is that what's in that letter?
That would be great, because I think that's when they're gonna begin the EY audit.
And Dan, I'm not sure if you mentioned it earlier, did you say that chamber offices are moving to this building? Is that the plan?
99% sure that that's our plan.
Okay.
What'll happen to the Farmers Club?
We're in conversations now. We basically we've set up 3 possible scenarios for us. One is just to maintain the building. The other would be to sell the building, and then the third option would be to potentially maintain ownership but lease the building. That's where we're leaning at this point. Would be to maintain ownership of that building, to be able to preserve its historical nature. It's the only building in downtown Seymour that's on the National Registry of Historic Places. So we think we have some responsibility in that, we feel like. So we're leaning towards the idea of maintaining ownership of the property, so that way we can maintain the exterior of the building to the standards of the restrictive covenants, and then potentially lease the office space, preferably to another nonprofit would be a great scenario, we think.
Chris, at one point, we were trying to make sure that we're able to contribute to a project of this nature. The foundation's a 501c4, three.
When I discussed that question with the folks at Barnes and Thornburg, they didn't have reservations of you funding to a 501c3.
Okay. Any other questions for Dan?
And just to clarify that a little more, like the chamber operates as a C6.
Right.
All of this is happening through the C3. It's titled or deeded to the foundation, the ready applications to the foundation. So we're keeping that separate.
Okay.
In your conversations with the county, when you presented this to them, there was talk of central dispatch. Have they given you any indication that may happen on that parcel?
Again, that would happen in the parcel that we transferred back to the county, and that would be up to county leadership to make that determination. All we're developing is what I call the retail building, which is the block building right at the intersection there of 2nd and Broadway. That tire shop building east of that, again, that has all been transferred to the county, and that would be it's their property. They would make decisions based on what to do with that property.
Okay, so that I understand then, yours is just gonna be where George's original shop was at. The tire shop, kind of an L-shaped chunk, has gone to the county.
It's actually a parcel. There's actually 4 parcels on what we all kind of know as George's. There's 2 buildings. We have ownership of the west building that's right at the intersection of 2nd and Broadway. The county has ownership of the building that was known as the farm tire
building,
shop.
yeah.
The farm. Yeah, that belongs to the county, that parcel in that building.
What about the ground to the north of?
That's a separate parcel. That's not even owned by the Bose family.
That's still owned by Bose's then?
No.
No.
They sold it 2 or 3 years ago
Okay.
to another party, but it's
Okay.
not involved in this. It would just be adjacent to our property across the alley.
Okay.
I noticed there are a lot of folks in the audience. I'm not sure how all this works, but at some point, does anybody have anything they'd like to say? Please state your name.
Bob Beatty. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the city to get involved. I was on council here back in the early 2000s, and we've been talking since way before then about redevelopment of the downtown area. And I think Dan has really done his homework on this, and I think it's a very good opportunity for the city to step up and make an investment in the downtown. A lot of others have already, private owners have stepped up. We all know who they are. I don't have to name them here. Okay, we've had a few in the last couple of years really step up. We need to keep it going. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to provide entrepreneurial type folks the information and the skills that they need to move forward with businesses that can step into downtown and create a business that's going to be a benefit to all of us. So
Thank you.
I would urge you guys to support it.
You're not seeing any other comments. Would entertain a motion if somebody would like to make one.
I'll make a motion to support the project up to the 240,000 match. If the ready's under that, then I would match up to that point, but up to 240.
I have a question. Dan, during your presentation to the county, they had asked for a seat on the Chamber's board. Was that, I know that was given, is that a voting member or non-voting?
Ex officio, non-voting member.
It's ex officio, just like the mayor is then?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, we made sure that that was an equitable seat.
okay.
We have a motion
I'll second the motion.
in a second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Dan.
Thank
you. Okay, annual TIF impact presentation. Mr. Fosbrink.
Yeah, and good to see you all again. Hope everybody's doing well. I think before I get into the TIF impact, I got just a quick couple of updates on the financial report that I want to let you guys know about.
Okay.
As you know, the Tech Park Fund can receive up to $250,000, and we just found out from the Department of Revenue that it will receive the full $250,000. So you'll see that there in that fund on the plan. But yes, we will get into the TIF impact presentation. Starting there on the first page, this is just to check off all the reporting requirements we've done so far this year. We've knocked out the April requirements, the June 15th requirements, and your neutralizations. We will also be doing your ensuing year TIF spending plan, which is that new one that the DLGF is now requiring. We'll be coming and doing that at the November meeting and updating you guys on what all comes with that and what we're going to be doing as far as what numbers put in there for your guys' plan for next year's spending. So we'll knock that out in November. And then, of course, today we'll be doing the TIF impact presentation and check that one off as well. Going into page 2 here, this is just going to show all of your allocation areas with their creation years and expiration years. You guys had, across all areas, about $240 million worth of incremental AV between the 4 areas. And then I'm going to skip over the How TIF Works page for a second and come right back to it and take a look at the financial position page first. Each allocation area here will have its beginning year balance along with its projected revenues and expenditures for the rest of the year and its ending balance as well, what each one is projected to end at the end of this year. So you guys can take a look at those numbers. I guess the only thing to point out there is Jackson Park is now receiving its revenues. But just to go back to the How TIF Works slide and just give a little refresher on just how the TIF areas are all working. start at base AV whenever there's, say, it starts at a cornfield where a developer wants to come to. That cornfield, the assessor assesses at $100,000, let's say. That establishes the base AV. TIF comes in, we establish a TIF area on that property, that area. The developer comes in, and what the new development that developer puts onto there, that is all going to be the incremental AV, which, looking at the chart that we have over there, you'll see that base AV that is first set, let's say, like I said, it was 100,000, that is going to go to all the overlapping units no matter what. They will always receive that. Any development that happens on top of that cornfield that was assessed at 100,000 is now the incremental AV that then goes to the RDC to pay for different project costs that then amount into more incremental AV. Then, of course, at the end of that TIF's allocation area's life, we now have that new post-project AV that then all belongs to all the overlapping units. And then just incremental AV can come in the form of new construction or abatements rolling off, things like that. New destruction, if a building would for some reason catch fire and burn down, that would cause a decrement to AV. But other than that, just incremental AV is going to be new construction and abatements rolling off and things like that. Then moving on to your guys' current projects as well as a couple future projects. You guys might have a new TIF creation coming next year. You have your 2nd Street, your Main Street stuff, your O'Brien Street, Quality of Life, Jackson County Education Coalition that you guys pay every year, as well as CCMG projects. And now to move on to the actual TIF impact here. In order to quantify a TIF's impact to the overlapping units, we have to ask the following question. Would property taxes collected today remain the same if the city never utilized TIF, and if all of the developments that were incentivized and made possible by TIF still hypothetically happened if there was no TIF? So those are the questions that we have to ask when kind of thinking through this impact. And taking a look over at your TIF impact chart, you guys can check out those numbers right there. The numbers I want to point out on this slide are going to be your total revenues without TIF, your total TIF collections, and the additional revenue because of having the TIF and because of the RDC's work. And I'll get into those total numbers here in more detail on the next page and what they actually mean. So you'll see that the TIF margin is 0.67. The additional revenue because of the RDC and the TIFs is 4.7 roughly. Your total 2024 TIF revenue collections, 7.08 or 048. And then total revenues without the TIF is going to be about 2.2. But I'll get into what this kind of all means here on this next page. So the RDC TIF margin, as we call it, the TIF margin is stated in terms of additional money collected per every $1 collected by the RDC. So the TIF margin is additional revenue per every dollar that the RDC would have foregone should there have been no TIFs and no RDC existing. And that the same developments and things, projects that happened to create all this incremental AV still would have happened, just there would have been no TIFs and no RDC. So like I mentioned before, $7 million in TIF revenues will be collected in 2024 across all of your areas, 4.7 of which will be collected due to the city's utilization of TIF, and then leaving only 2.2 would have been shared across all the overlapping units should the TIFs not have been there. And this is your circuit breaker impact. It just really shows the opportunity of what the TIF can bring and what your guys' work and projects you've done with each of the TIF areas has brought in revenue-wise. And this is all able to happen because TIF is not constrained by the state's allowable property tax levy growth percentage. And that is how the TIF is able to collect all of that additional revenue. So we really like to see it as, instead of like a TIF impact, we like to call it the TIF opportunity because it truly allowed you to collect 4.7 more that then can be shared across all overlapping units later versus only 2.2 should there have been no TIF or RDC when all these projects had happened. But that is truly what the TIF impact presentation is. I'm available to answer any questions you guys might have about any of these on here. If you have any.
Any questions for Cole?
Can you just use a couple sentences and put in everyday language without any jargon for anybody who might be in here that has never gone through TIF training and all the other things that we've gone through? Just might make it a little easier for everybody to understand, like what our benefits are.
Just the benefits of having a TIF? Yep. I mean, since the TIF isn't constrained by the levy growth quote percentage, the TIF can then just capture more revenues because of that. So let's say there was no TIF whatsoever, no RDC. The projects that were coming in here, developments that had happened, would have only generated 2.2 million for the overlapping units to share.
So that there would be far fewer roads that had improvements or were built. There would be far fewer development projects throughout the city in the TIF areas, far fewer supports for our industries and other business owners. So the TIF helps the community as a whole. Absolutely.
And then on top of that, long term is where the real benefit comes in. That's, like I was saying, just the differences in amounts that would have actually been shared across the overlapping units would be so much smaller had the TIFs not have been here, and just that base would have been getting received instead of all the increment that then gets to be shared later on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Come on up.
So, what is the life of a TIF before we start being able to spread that everywhere?
The TIF can go on in perpetuity so long as none of the revenues are pledged towards debt payments. Once a TIF revenue is pledged towards debt service, then it starts a 25-year clock.
In 2008, when it started, it was 30 years, but 2 or 3 years after that, they shortened it to 25. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Cole. Cole, do you have anything else to add on the financial report? No?
Those are just the tech park numbers.
Okay. All right. Claims. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the claims vouchers? If so, would entertain a motion to pay them.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Second.
Thank you, Tim. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any other miscellaneous business? Not seeing any, would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
No, we still have all the